Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool rock-ola jukebox repair video for you today. We've done several videos repairing rock-ola jukeboxes here on our channel, so if you're into that, if you go to our main channel, I believe there's a playlist on there of all the different ones we've done. We love working on these things. And the cool thing about the old 45 boxes, at least, is they're usually... most of the stuff in them still works, you just need to service them. So we thought we would do a little video on this one. This is a rock-ola 424, which is a little older than what we usually work on. A lot of times we work on the machines from the 80s. This one is from 1964, so it's kind of the generation before the ones that we usually work on. We've done several of the 70s models and 80s models. And, you know, they put out a new model every year, or a couple models every year sometimes. But we usually don't do one quite this old. So, but I've gotten a lot of questions on this particular style of changer over the years, so I figured I would do some videos as we were working through one. This one's got a problem I haven't ever fixed on one of these older ones. But if you're seeing this video, that means I got it fixed, or I wouldn't have put the video up. So we're going to work through it during this video. And... show you what the deal is. Now, the first thing is I have disassembled part of it because I was working underneath it. But what I have removed is over here. On this era, they have this little basket that sits in there that's made out of plastic, and it's just a cover that makes it look nice. So that sits down in there with the arm back there, and then the turntable, of course, sits right here. So I've removed that. Just so I can get to stuff a little easier. I'm going to slide the turntable back on it for what we're doing. Now when you do that, by the way, when you push it down, there's an idler wheel over here. This wheel touches the motor. On our particular one, the motor's hanging because of this grommet here, but for what we're doing right now, that's not that big of a deal. We'll have to fix that later, of course. But I'm just going to slide this back on, and when you do, the idler wheel a lot of times will be sticking out the side, so you got to kind of push it under the plate, and then the plate will drop down into place. Okay, the platter. Okay, so what this one's doing is, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but when you scan it, it moves really slow, and then sometimes when it plays the record, it'll just die. Everything stops. So we've got some kind of power transmission problem that we're going to figure out with the schematics. I've had a lot of people email me with similar problems, and so I thought this would be a good video to do. This is a very attractive jukebox. This thing is going to look amazing whenever we get it fixed. So I'm going to turn it on and let's see what happens. Okay. So we are in the off position. If I move it to operate, nothing's happening. It shouldn't be like that. It should probably be at the home position, but I haven't had it working yet, so I'm not sure. But if I go to scan, see how it's moving, but it's moving very slowly. Right? So we got to figure out why that is. I'm going to put it back to operate. It's telling me to select something. Let's try to select one. K1. It's spun around and flipped over a switch. Now it's going to try to find K1. Okay, it's found it. It's very slowly grabbing it, putting it down, puts the record in place, and then stops. So that's what we've got going on. Now if I move the needle, it doesn't cancel. You don't hear any amplification. And it's just sitting here like that. Okay, so that's where we're beginning. So we need to figure out, basically, we've got a bunch of clues there, right? It will operate, but very slowly after you make a selection. And then it'll lay it down and lay the needle down, but then it stops. Okay, and whenever you scan, it moves very slowly. So that's our, those are our clues. Let's see if we can figure out in the schematics why it would do that. All right, so I'm fortunate enough to have a copy of this manual, but I'll tell you, the games, not the games, we work on arcade games and pinballs, obviously. The jukeboxes are all the same for several years. So if you've got a manual copy, this is a rock-ola 424, but But if you've got one from the 5 or 6 years around that, maybe even more, it's going to have the exact same mechanism in it, and it's going to work the same way. There may be minor little differences, but not usually. You can literally take the mech out of one machine and put it in another. And if you think about it, that makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel, literally, over and over again when they can make a really good one that works really well and then just put it in these boxes for 10 or 15 years and then maybe you get a new model. So if you look through one of the manuals, they have the sequence where they basically tell you what sequence everything happens in. So they tell you word for word exactly how the thing works. And the way you use this manual is you go through and you find the area that's not working. So for instance, if I start at the beginning here, it says sequence number 1, 25-cent coin registered. Right? So it just tells you how all that works. Okay? A 25-cent coin will register 3 10-cent selections on the accumulator master ratchet, allowing the album credit switch number 4 to transfer and credit switches number 1 and number 2 to close. Credit switch number 1 energizes the lock bar solenoid to allow the push buttons to latch when depressed. Credit switch number 2 completes the circuit to the single play only light. When 3 or more credits are established, the album credit switch number 4 is actuated by the master ratchet connecting circuit to the album light. The customer now has a choice of selecting 3 standard records or 1 album side. So it literally tells you how every little thing works. So I'm going to go through here to the point where ours is not working. Okay, so here's where we may be starting to have trouble. So it says sequence number 2, selection registered. Now you saw, we put it in. It says tripping of any selection lever to the play position completes a circuit to the play control relay via the wobble plate switch. Relay operates starting the amplifier and turntable motor, circuit not shown, and contact 5 closes circuits to the magazine motor relay and mute relay. The magazine motor relay operates, thereby closing circuits to the magazine motor field and armature coils. Magazine begins to rotate, home switch 3 closes. Okay, so whenever we selected the record, we hit K1, it did that selected it, and then it did the write-in procedure where the wheel turned and it flipped one of those little levers on the box. So let me show you that again. So the first thing it has to do, it was telling us that we could make a selection. I hit K and 1. I held them down because our last one we did that, but it was latched, so you could just hit K and then hit 1. And it holds them down, and then this starts turning. This is the write-in carriage. And so it will turn around, and when it gets to a lever that represents number K1, a little coil on the hammer, on the carriage here, knocks that switch over. Click, right? And that's your selection. It just selected one. And that little thing there does it, that little coil. Okay, there's 2 of them, one for either one. So let's say it knocks it over. Well, when it does on the other side, click, it knocks it up. Okay. Also, when it does that, there is a little piece inside of here. This is called the wobble plate inside of here. And if you look, well, we're too close. We're too close, folks. Let me see if I can see how that's moving. That's the wobble plate. So when that moves, it hits a little switch which tells the machine, hey, there's a selection. So when the machine hears, hey, there's a selection, it starts to read out. So our write-in is working fine. It selects just fine. Yours may not be, but that's a whole other thing. But to test the write-out, you don't really need to be able to make a selection. All you need to do is knock over one of those switches by hand. So you can just hit one, and it should start looking for it. Okay, so we're going to step through it on the schematics. I'm going to show you exactly what's happening as I work through it in my head as well. Some of you people that are more technically minded, you're going to hate this video because I'm going to do it really slow and pedantic. But those of you who have a jukebox and you're just trying to fix it in your house, you're going to love it because we're going to figure out together exactly how it works, okay? So if you read, you can follow along on the schematics with what it says here. So it says, tripping of any selection lever to the play position completes a circuit to the play control relay via the wobble plate switch. So you saw that little switch that moved in the back. When that connects, that's this right here. That switch connects, okay? So when it does, you're connecting the common, which is the ground, through the switch, up through here, and we've got the, remember we had it in off, scan, or operate. If it's in operate, it turns on the play control relay, because the play control relay is connected to negative 26 volts, or negative 28 volts on the other side there. So just by that little wobble plate moving, it connects power to the play control relay. So when the relay comes on, it says relay operates, starting the amplifier and turntable motor. The circuit is not shown. But then contact 5 on that relay, since it's turned on, closes. And it closes the circuits to the magazine motor relay and the mute relay. Okay, so this is contact 5. So the play control relay we came on because of the wobble plate switch. Now it's on. So when it comes on, it closes this switch, which connects negative 28 to this line. So now this line connects over to the mute relay, which is connected to the ground through this diode and through to the number 3 micro switch. So that's your ground line, right? So we have turned on the mute relay. That's why when I'm rubbing the thing, nothing's happening, I guess. Right, and then at the same time, it turns on the magazine motor relay. Now this is just the relay, not the actual motor. So it turns on the magazine motor relay the same way. Since the number 2 micro switch is still closed, power can go this way. Through the interlock release contacts, power can go through this way. Through the number 1 micro switch, power can go through this way. And then it is connected, it's actually going the other way, but you get my point. It's connected through the actual coil on the relay to ground, right? So in a circuitous, whatever, roundabout way, it turns both of those on, okay? The magazine motor relay operates, thereby closing circuits to the magazine motor field and armature coils. The magazine begins to rotate, home switch number 3 closes, okay? So here is the magazine motor relay. Once it comes on, this switch closes. So when it closes, 28 volts goes through the switch. The ground is on the other side of the motor, blah, 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 and wham, we're good to go. So now we've got power running through the magazine motor. It's just running slow. So just by looking at this, I'm wondering if they always run that slow on that vintage of machine. It looks too slow to me. Or if the problem is our voltage is wrong. So we kind of need to check and see if that negative 28 is correct. Is that negative 28? So we need to see if we've got something near that on the machine. So a good place to check that would be to put a multimeter on the 2 pins coming out of the motor, and then turning it on and having it turn and just seeing how much voltage is running through it. See if it says it's negative 28 volts. Okay, I measured. There's the motor just plugs in. So here we go. The motor just plugs in. So I measured at the wires, and yes, it has negative 28 volts. Everything's moving really slowly though, so it's probably a lubrication issue, or it's gummed up or something. So we'll keep our eye on that, but we may even have to remove the motor and disassemble it. We'll see if it moves freely disconnected from the magazine. But we are getting negative 28, and you got to make sure that it's not positive 28, because then it would probably run backwards. The negative 28. Okay, and then it says magazine begins to rotate, the home switch closes. So the home switch is here. Once the magazine is not at home, it's closed, and the reason it does that is so that the play control relay, I guess, stays on until it gets back to the home position. Sequence number 3, A and B snap switches operate. Depending on the last homed position of the magazine, the A-B snap switches will select either the A or B side of the record depending on which comes up first. As the magazine cycles and fails to locate an A side selection, the snap switches then connect circuits for the B selections through a mechanical action that is caused by the cycling of the record magazine. So whenever the record magazine goes one whole revolution, there's this little dog in there that makes they call it a dog, that makes a couple switches change back and forth, back and forth. And so the first time it goes around, the switches are over on A, and the second time it goes around, the switches are over on B. It does that to connect different areas of the readout circuit so that it can find the one of the pins that's tripped and then be able to knock it back over. So ours is doing all of that too. So all of that seems to be fine because remember, it eventually finds the record and then starts laying it down. So we're getting through all of this. All of this is working just fine. Sequence number 4, carriage trips the interlock relay. The proper A and B circuits now established, the carriage indexing contact strikes the selection lever 1, thereby completing the circuit to the interlock trip coil. So what they're saying is as the readout carriage runs around, it eventually finds that little lever that's stuck open. And there's a little piece of metal in there that actually hits it. That's it. And that's it, basically. So it may be one of the ones on the A side or one of the ones on the B side, but eventually it will turn around and it will hit it. Well, whenever it actually physically touches it, there's an electrical contact. The lever is grounded. It goes through that little thing that's moving. The readout carriage is connected to the wobble plate assembly there that we were looking at by all these little contacts on the side, these circular contacts with a little blade running over it, right? So that's that. So ground, right? And if it's B, you know, it caught it when it went around for the B. Now, what would have happened if there was one on A? It wouldn't have got it that time. It would have got it the next time it runs around because that switch would have switched over to A. But it caught a B and comes up here and through this resistor pulls in the interlock trip coil. Now, the interlock trip coil always has power on the other side of it in this circuitous fashion as long as the magazine motor relay is in, right? Remember, it's connected to negative 28. It's actually the other way around because it's a negative. But so now the interlock trip coil has power. So what's it do? It pulls in, right? So it closes two switches. The first one it closes it does it at the same time, but it closes this one, which connects itself to ground so that it doesn't have to worry about the selection levers because it's about to knock the selection lever back over. Right? So now it's got a solid ground and it's going to stay like that as long as the trip coil is on. So it's holding itself on. And then the other one that it pulls in is the, what do they call it? They're just calling it a contact. So it's connecting ground through this, through it's running on the side of the motor, of the wobble plate assembly. Both of these selection lever reset coils would be grounded, right? And then it comes up here, but look, it's not actually connected to power because of this number 2 micro switch not being closed. Okay, so this though is now fed straight through, and this side is grounded. Sequence number 5, record indexed. As the trip armature of the interlock completes its stroke, the release armature relaxes, transferring contacts 5. So this interlock coil that we were just talking about, there's 2 coils that work in tandem in the bottom. It's the trip coil and the interlock release coil. So it's the same thing. There's 2 right beside each other. It's in a box that's hanging underneath the turntable. And they're set up in such a way that when one of the coils comes in, it moves switches that are hanging in the middle of the 2 coils. And then when this one comes in, it pulls the switches this way. That one comes in, it pulls the switches that way. So they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, depending on which one of them pulls in, right? So as the trip armature of the interlock completes its stroke, the release armature relaxes, transferring contacts 5. So these 2 contacts here, they were up here this whole time. But now they've popped down. So now remember, one of them was being used to hold in the magazine motor relay. Okay, let's see what it says about that. This short circuits the magazine motor armature, the dotted lines, dynamically braking the magazine and bringing it to a quick stop. The magazine motor relay does not release due to the discharge current flowing through its coil. from the parallel RC network. The rectifier blocks the discharge current from flowing through the short circuit path. A circuit is simultaneously completed to the gripper motor through contact 5, causing it to engage the indexed record. Okay? So, when that pulls in at the same time, it bam, drops those two. Well, when it does, see, notice they're connected to each other as well. When it does, now we have ground here. This is our mute. It's still doing its thing. We've got ground here, and it's finally doing something. Before, it wouldn't have been connected. Our 28 is coming down where it was coming down here to go through, or negative 28. Now it's not. So this is just ground running through the micro switch, and it just makes the magazine stop instantly, and that's how they keep it from like overshooting the record. Okay. And then at the same time, it says a circuit is simultaneously completed to the gripper motor through contact 5. So the gripper motor, where is it? Here we go. So the gripper motor gets its power. It's still connected. It's been connected up through here, but it never had a ground. Yeah, previously that was negative 28, and so it had negative 28 on both sides. When that moves, now this side's grounded and the motor starts. So the gripper motor starts, and it's geared in such a way that it pulls in and grabs a record. Okay, we're getting close to where our problem is. Sequence number 6, camshaft rotates, microswitch number 1 and number 2 transfer. Prior to the gripper jaws engaging the record, the microswitch cam cluster operates the number 1 microswitch at number 7, thereby disconnecting the magazine motor relay coil and its RC network. So the number 1 microswitch is the first one to go. So it was making the magazine motor relay hold on. But now that this has went over, we are now getting ground through the gripper motor. And I guess eventually we'll be on the reverse relay coil. We just don't use it yet. Shortly thereafter, the discharge current through the relay coil 6 is too small to keep the relay coil energized. Contact 5 opens because of that, thereby disconnecting the magazine motor field coil. Okay, so number 5 pops open because this died finally because it didn't have any power. Pops open, and now the magazine motor is not getting any power. Yeah, so it was getting negative 28 from here. Once that opens, nada. The gripper motor continues to operate and places the record on the turntable. Ours does that, right? At this point, the number 2 microswitch operates, allowing the gripper motor circuit to be completed through the 15 ohm resistor, thereby slowing the speed of the motor. Thereby slowing the thereby slowing the speed of the motor. All right. Okay, so whenever this, let's see here. The gripper motor continues to operate and places the record on the turntable. At this point, the number 2 microswitch operates, allowing the gripper motor circuit to be completed through the 15 ohm resistor, thereby slowing the speed of the motor. Okay, so we've got where the gripper motor is working. So where is it at again? We're about to get it, people. Aren't you excited? Boy, if I don't get it, I'll look like even a bigger fool. Where is our gripper motor? Here we go, gripper motor. So we should be getting power through the number 2 microswitch. right? So our negative 28 should be coming through here and driving the gripper motor. If something was ever wrong with that number 2 micro switch, maybe it doesn't connect from here to here so well. So let's say that's just open like it is now. Well, then the negative 28 that comes through would still get over here, but it would run through a 15 ohm resistor, which would make it run slower, the gripper motor run slower. Now, why would they do that? Why do they? So they've got it where when the record lays down, this turns off to slow the motor down. Why do they do that? It's so that whenever they lower the needle on the record player, it does it slowly. So they want it to slowly lower it down so that it doesn't skip. They went through all that trouble to add that extra little circuit in just to make that happen. At this point, the number 2 micro switch operates, allowing the gripper motor circuit to be completed through the 15 ohm resistor, thereby slowing the speed of the motor. So ours is always slow, but our magazine motor is always slow too. So I wonder if that would be the same. Let me think. I'm trying to think if there is a way that this could, that number 2 micro switch could be the same problem. Usually the magazine motor gets its speed through here. This interlock is not pulled in. It should go around. That's the relay though. The magazine motor's here. Where does it get its power? Through a contact on the magazine motor relay. Yeah, I don't think there could be any way to backfeed that, which would cause our problem that we're having right now. The magazine motor, it should never run slow because of this problem. However, the gripper motor running slow could absolutely be because the number 2 micro switch is never connected. And it would run just fine without that. So it's basically, it's running the power through this resistor. I'll bet if I check the power on the gripper motor, it's never getting the negative 28. But if the magazine motor has like a lubrication problem where that's causing it to run slow, the gripper motor could have the same problem. Okay? So that's something to look at. Let's move on and see what it's supposed to do next, because remember, ours stops. Sequence number 7, the selection lever resets. The number 2 micro switch, now transferred, completes a circuit to the selection lever reset coil, which causes a lever to reset the selector lever to its normal position. Okay? So once that number 2 micro switch goes back the other way, and so my theory is on the other one is that whenever it's closed this way, it's not conducting power, right? But now it goes this way, and it does, and the negative 28 comes down this way through the A or B snap switch, whichever side it was on, you know. Remember the magazine stopped wherever it was. And goes through the selection lever reset coil. So that's a little coil on the readout side that pulls in, and its job is to push the little selection lever back down so that that record's no longer selected. Okay, and so the ground is connected down here. We did that earlier. And remember, we had ground all the way up to here. Well, now the switch changes, or we had ground up to here, I guess. The switch changes, and now both sides are connected like it needs to be, and that's that. Which causes a lever to reset the selection lever to its normal position. If no other selections are registered, the wobble plate switch returns to the off position. Yeah, so the selection levers hold the wobble plate switch on. Okay, so that would turn it off. But you're not at home, so you would still have power to your play control relay because you're not in the home position. At the home position, there's no record. So if you're ever playing a record, you can't be at home. The play control relay is now held in by the mechanism home switch. Sequence number 8, record transfer cycle completed, the gripper motor stops. Okay. Continued operation of the gripper motor opens the gripper arm jaws and allows the tone arm to be placed on the record. at this point, here we go. This is the point we're at, right? At this point, the number 3 micro switch is operated, completing a circuit to the interlock release coil. The energized release coil armature transfers contact 7s to their original position. This places a short circuit across the gripper motor, dynamically braking it and stopping the grip mechanism. As the interlock release armature completes its stroke, the interlock trip armature relaxes, opening contacts 8 and 9. The opening of contact 8 breaks the circuit to the selection lever reset coil. The resistor capacitor network across the mute relay coil at 6 keeps the coil energized for a short time, even though the circuit is disconnected at 5. This additional time delay mutes the amplifier during the tone arm sit down and entry into the first record groove, thus eliminating undesirable noises. Okay. Not sure if all of that's happening. Okay, so here's my theory of what's happening with ours. Okay. What I think's happening is the home switch is never working. That's my opinion. So what's going on is when it trips the selection lever, there's never power running through this. I think it's always running through this wobble plate switch, the ground. And so I think what's happening is when it resets the selection lever, the wobble plate switch opens, which kills power to the play control relay, which kills power to that contact there, which is causing us all kinds of problems. Our negative 28 is still available over here, but all of this over here no longer has negative 28 volts on it. So right when it gets to that spot on the gripper motor where it resets the selection, it's killing the power, and there's just enough juice left for it to try to set the needle down. But it seems like it doesn't always set it all the way down, because I think it's just using whatever power's left, and then it kind of stops. And everything dies. The turntable turns off because the play control relay is what holds the turntable in, remember? So that's my theory. So if you followed us all this time, I'm going to go check and see if the home switch is making good contact. It looks like it's on the side of the read-in or the read-out on the wobble plate. So we'll go see maybe the wire's not making good contact or something like that. And I think what that will do is get the speed of our gripper motor up, but I don't know that it'll get the speed of the magazine motor up. But we'll see. So I'm going to go find the home switch, and I think that's the whole problem. Oh, and for further proof, if we move it to scan, remember it works, right? Because scan is dead to ground. So when you move it to scan, it turns on your play control relay, and you're able to move it. So after that needle just stops and it sits there, no matter what I do, I can't get it to play. That's because the gripper motor, whenever I can't get it to reject or anything. It's because the gripper motor can't get power because the play control relay is not on, which it should be because it's not at home. Okay, but if I move it to scan, it starts moving through it, and it does its whole thing, and it will eventually hang it back up and then start turning the basket, albeit too slow. So it's got to be this home switch. Let's go look at it. Okay, so we're laying down on the floor. I'm going to show you what our problem is. Now on yours, it's probably not going to be this. It's kind of an extreme problem. But if you've got this problem, you'll run into something similar. These are the A-B snap switches that it was talking about. Now look how this thing works. I'm just showing you this because they're very similar to our home switch. See this bar here? As the magazine turns around, for one revolution, the gearing up there is such that this is down where it's touching these two switches, and it's making them be that way. Okay, now I want to scan it. You'll see what happens. So they're closed right now, or open, or whatever. And now they've went the other way. Okay, so by pushing on these, you are opening and closing the switches in there. So I'll just push it and you can see, watch the centerpiece. Oop. See how they go back and forth? So that's kind of like how a micro switch works. Okay. So over here, this is our readout. This is the right end. This is the readout. So as I scan it, both the basket and the readout work at the same time. Now remember, I was saying, oh, it's one of those traces on the side. Nope, they did it a little differently. Look at this contraption. There is a switch that they have hanging down off of the side, and look how it's bent all the crap, right? And see how the switch is missing, the little piece is missing in there. That is on the A-B snap switches over here. The little piece that goes back and forth is missing. So watch what happens. This is a pretty interesting way of doing it. So as we turn around, I'll show you when we get to home. Okay, we're coming up on home. So when those get about level, it's on home. I see this little bracket that they've got hanging off of the arm. It's going to hit that little switch. Bam! Now why would it do that? What it's supposed to be doing is opening the switch at the home position. And that way it knows it's home. Well, it doesn't really know that it's home, but it just kills that power. Okay? But as soon as you move past it, it should close. And it should be closed no matter where you are. And by doing that, it would give us the power that we need to keep the play control relay on, so that the turntable would keep spinning and all that stuff. So this is bent, and there's a little piece missing, and that's causing all of our problems. Okay, so we should be able to test our theory with a jumper wire across the switch. So we'll just select a record. Watch how whenever it cancels the record, that's when it all dies. It's writing in. Oh, I'm not in scan. Oh, operate. Still think that's moving too slow. So it'll find it. The readout is going around. It'll find the lever eventually. Okay, now it's going to get it when I watch. Did you hear the clink clink? That was the hammer resetting the lever, which collapsed the wobble plate switch, which means that the gripper arm isn't getting power anymore. So if our theory is right, and look, the needle didn't quite go all the way down because the lever gets canceled before the gripper arm finishes. So if our theory is right, if I jumper across the two wires on the home switch, that should turn the play relay back on and get it to all finish. So let's see. Here we go. I'm playing it at random, people. I don't know. Sounds good to me. Now, obviously, all of this needs rebuilt. We haven't done anything with the amp yet. But with that switch working right, it should cancel and everything, too. So it'll go back. But what's going to happen is it'll never stop cycling because it'll never find the home position because we've got the jumper attached to it. So I'll bet it just keeps going and going and going. So if while it's doing that we pick another one, it will eventually find it. So it wrote it in. Since it's not at home, the switch should be closed anyway, so everything's cool. Eventually she'll find it. Found it. What no? Conway Twitty, what am I living for on MGM? Not for sale. Deal with it, folks. I don't have the big speakers plugged in either. Okay, so I think that's definitely our problem. So we need to fix that switch. See, the gripper arm I think is moving at the right speed. And look, the basket is starting to get faster. That's going to be a lubrication problem. Okay, we've got it at the home position. It's not quite centered in the home position. But I could probably change that by adjusting this switch a little bit. So I replaced the broken one. So you can see the little blades missing in there that would have connected to that contact there. You can't find these. I looked all over the internet, tried to order one. Found a few people that had used ones they were trying to sell for a fortune. Can't do it, folks. So I just used a pinball switch because I use end of stroke switches in pinball machines all the time. So I mounted it in there, wired it up the same, and it's normally closed, but whenever that little arm comes around, it hits the longer blade and opens it up. So depending on how that's bent, it would do that earlier or later and change the position of where it stops for home. There's also an adjustment here on the back. You can move that switch with those two nuts, but it's already all the way one way, it looks like. So I need to, my switch is a little bit too long, and so there's various things you can do. You can get a shorter switch, and they make different ones. But it looks like we're good. So if I just switched it into off. And then I'm going to switch it to scan. So I moved it off home a little bit. Right? So the switch closed. So now if I go back to operate, it should go all the way back around and find home position. It might go twice, I don't know. Yep. So it opened the switch, killed the power to the mech, and now it's stopped. So let's see if we can get it to select something. So right in, kick the little lever over. Now the readout is looking, which turns the magazine at the same time. Should catch it, transfers to the gripper arm, lays it down, and it's working. Now we need to go through and do a bunch of other stuff, but we've at least got it where it that switch was causing us all kinds of problems. So next up I'm going to oil the thing. Okay, so right at the beginning it has a lubrication chart in this manual, and it says the code is, a little black dot is 1 drop of high-grade light machine oil every 3 months. I usually use like 3-in-1 20 weight oil. You can use 10 weight too, but it's probably a little bit too light. And then the plus sign is a light film aero-grade lubriplate every 3 months. I usually use like synthetic grease. We have some of that on our website that we use a lot. Super Lube we use on pinball machines. And then if it's got an X mark, do not oil or grease. And it says caution notes. 1, do not drip oil on the amplifier. That'd be bad. 2, do not oil the selector unit. That'd be bad too, because oil, it would conduct, so it would really screw up your selector unit. 3, do not drip oil on records. That'd be bad as well. So it has this little diagram here. Boy, this is high tech for 1964. Look at this. So it's black and white, and it's faded out wherever. Man, it makes you wonder how they even did this back in the day. It's faded out where you don't have to pay attention. But it says wearing surfer on gripper mechanism, turnover cam and gears, and it's a little plus mark. So put a film of synthetic grease on that. Basically, it's do you grease it or oil it? Grease. Gripper drive gears, grease. Gripper motor, 2 places, oil. So you want oil on the gripper motor. And the magazine motor, 2 places. Want oil on the magazine motor. Okay. The drive gears, grease. It says turntable oil wick, 45 RPM only. I don't know about that. We're going to look at that. Micro cam and levers, grease. And then main shaft bearing rear, 3 drops, oil. And again, you just look in the manual. It shows you all of this stuff. And then it shows you it with the record, with the turntable off. Okay. So on this side it says main shaft bearing, 3 drops of oil. Gears, grease. The tone arm rest bracket, grease. The turntable idler wheel slide, oil. The turntable idler wheel bearing, do not drip oil on rubber wheel. So the idler wheel, the bearing in the middle of it, just a little bit of oil. Now on mine, I need to work on it because the grommets are messed up, so it's hanging off, canted to one side. It's not supposed to be like that. And then finally, the gripper drive gears, grease. Do not oil the counter indicator fingers. So on the front, this counts how many times each record's been played. Okay, and then it says, or I thought it said, okay, yeah, that's the X's. So don't oil the counter indicator fingers, and don't oil the selector levers. Okay, so I'm going to go oil some of that, and we'll see if that makes our magazine turn better. I guess the 2 on the end might have something to do with it, and the actual motor might have something to do with it. But you wouldn't think oiling a motor would make it run faster, but maybe it's got serious problems, and if it does, we probably shouldn't have been running it. Okay, so I oiled it a little bit. It seems to have really sped up the basket, but I'm going to keep working on it. Sometimes you have to disassemble some of this stuff to clean it up. The gripper arm, often you have to take this apart to oil in here. We did a whole video about that in the past, but this basket is moving a lot quicker now. It seems like the longer that we mess with it, the more it moves. I oiled the bearing at the end and at that end, and then the shaft goes through a spot here and over here that I oiled as well, so it's definitely a lot faster than it was. Oh, and I oiled the motor. There's a little wick, like a little weep hole at the top of the motor. So that might be how fast it's supposed to be. I don't know. And of course with the switch fixed, if we put it in operate, it will go to where it goes. Okay, now another thing to look at, let me show you a really common problem on these. Really common. The way the turntable turns is that idler wheel that we talked about. A really common problem is this is the shaft of the turntable. This bushing that goes under the screw isolates the motor from the mechanism so that you don't hear as much turntable noise. This bushing here is completely disintegrated. So because of that, these two are holding it in, but that one's not. So the motor is hanging canted under the machine. And because of that, this shaft, which is 3 different diameters, is hanging too low. So the idler wheel isn't touching it very well. And where it is touching it is on this smallest part of the shaft, which means it's running at 33 RPMs, which these are 45 RPM records. So how should it be? Well, it should be, if you had new bushings in it, it would be like that. And that would have it, boy, my production quality is awesome, isn't it? That would have it where the idler arm is on the middle part of the shaft, which is 45 RPM. And here's the oil on the rubber wheel that you're not supposed to do. I got too messy with the 20 weight 3-in-1 oil. Right? So these little bushings, You can order the exact bushing at jukeboxparts.com, or you can get them on eBay. I usually use rubber rings off the pinball machines, just because we do a lot of pinball machines. But those definitely need to be replaced. They get hard and brittle and just break apart. And then when it's extreme like this one, the motor literally falls out of the holder there and slows all the records down. So that's what you're looking at. And it's real easy to change. You just take that screw loose, put the grommet in, and put the screw back through the grommet, do them one at a time. So you may want to consider that. Go to jukeboxparts.com and you can pick those up. Now, if you want to see the things that we sell on our website, like this entire jukebox once we get it working, go to lionsarcade.com. There's a link down below. So hopefully that kind of stuff helps you get your jukebox working a little better. If you've got issues where it won't stop at home, or it stops after it lays the record down, check that home switch. You saw how the schematics work. If you've got an issue where it's moving too slow, you probably need to lubricate it. If you've got an issue where the turntable is turning too slow, like it's at 33 instead of 45, you've probably got a bad grommet, like we just showed. So I hope that helps you get yours working a little better. I'll tack a little piece here on the end of this up and running, just so you can see how beautiful this box is. Just a fantastic little box. So we're going to work through the amp and some stuff like that. But I figured I'd show you this since we get so many questions about why is the thing not running right, why is the mechanism stopping, etc., etc. If this wasn't your actual issue, maybe it'll help you understand how the schematics work and how the manual kind of illustrates the sequence of events. So give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. I'll show you the little piece of it whenever it's finished. And if you want to support our channel, the way you can do it is down below. There's a link to Amazon. If you decide you want to buy anything on Amazon, click that link and it'll take you to Amazon and tell them that we sent you. So it gives us a little tip of whatever you decide to purchase on Amazon. You can also check out our website, lionsarcade.com. Like I said, we've got a parts page on there where we sell some of our repair parts and things, and then also the full machines whenever we get done. So here's a clip of how it looks in the future. Now remember, I haven't seen it yet because I'm recording this video. But here's a little shot of what we came up with. Someone has painted the chrome black at some point, but this is a great looking little box. Here, I'll play you something crazy. I can't play the whole thing, people. If I play the whole thing, they'll block me. But these rock-olas just have a great look. Look at that thing. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you on the next one.